Hi, I'm Marty Pritikin, the Dean of Concord Law School at Purdue University Global, the nation's first fully online law school. Welcome to this latest installment in our Distinguished Speaker webinar series titled Leveraging Access to Justice with Innovative Technology. Now, this is a fitting topic for our first Distinguished Speaker webinar of 2023 because this year is Concord's 25th anniversary. Concord was actually founded back in 1998 when most people still had dial-up internet. Concord's mission since its inception has been to use innovative technology to make high-quality legal education accessible and affordable for those who couldn't fit traditional law school into their lives and budgets. Well, today we're fortunate to have not just one, but three distinguished speakers to discuss our topic, each of whom is a legal entrepreneur who's founded a tech company that promotes access to justice. I could easily spend the entire hour listing them and their incredible accomplishments, but in the interest of time, I'm going to keep it very brief and let them talk about themselves. Jazz Hampton is CEO and General Counsel of TurnSignal. Dorna Moini is the CEO and founder of Gavel, which up until yesterday was known as Documate. So today is its first day known as Gavel. Congratulations, Dorna. And finally, Kristen Sonday is the co-founder and CEO of Paladin. Thank you to all of you for being here today. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to those of you who are watching that you can feel free to post questions in the chat box, and we will try to integrate some of them into the conversation as we go. So first of all, let's have you talk a little bit about yourselves. I guess we'll go in reverse order. Kristen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before you started your company and how and why you started it?
Sure. Well, hello, good afternoon, good morning. Thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be here. So as mentioned, I am the co-founder and CEO of Paladin. And at Paladin, our mission is to increase access to justice by helping legal teams run more efficient pro bono programs. And my background is actually with the US Justice Department doing international criminal work in Mexico and Central America, where I was working with the FBI and the Marshals and our Mexican counterparts to extradite fugitives back to the US.
Wow.
And it was really during, it was super exciting and just really interesting work. And it was really during that experience with DOJ that I got to see firsthand how complicated our judicial system was to navigate. And I got to see, especially for underserved communities like my own, how having an advocate with you to help navigate the system, in our case, it was DOJ's office or the AUSA or the DA's offices, could really mean the difference between securing justice and not. And in other cases, winning and losing your case. And in the most drastic of cases, life or death. And so I knew I wanted to do something related to social justice, social impact, and help underserved communities get access to lawyers and legal professionals who could help them navigate our processes. And so at Paladin, we have built the first end-to-end solution that connects legal services organizations with top law firms and corporate teams and bar associations so that attorneys can find very easily clients and help them with their cases pro bono.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you to talk a little more in detail about your platform in a minute. Dorna, tell us a little bit about you. What were you doing and what led you to found Gavel?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. I was an attorney for many years, and I did a lot of pro bono work. Specifically, a lot of my pro bono work was done with domestic violence survivors. And as many of you who may be at law firms may know, there aren't so many hours that you can spend on your pro bono work. You obviously have to get your billable work done as well. And so I was finding that my time was really limited in how far I could take the cases that I was working on. I was spending a lot of time on earlier stages of the case that were process-oriented and rules-based, and wasn't able to spend as much time when something went up for appeal or someone needed more representation in the courtroom. So what I wanted to do is build a very specific tool at the time, which is the background for what is now Gavel, but not what we do anymore. I wanted to build a tool for domestic violence survivors to allow them to get onto a platform, answer questions, be routed down different pathways, and then get the documents and advice that they needed, or be connected to an attorney if they needed to for those parts of the case that required attorney assistance. So I built that tool with a friend of mine who was an engineer, but I, as an attorney, I did not have any coding background. So we launched this tool for domestic violence. It was sort of like a TurboTax for domestic violence.
Mhm.
And we started getting all this inbound interest from other attorneys. What they were saying is, hey, we want to build something like what you've built for domestic violence, but not for domestic violence, for other areas of law and other jurisdictions. And so that was exactly the kind of aha moment for us in building what is now Gavel, which is that there are so many people out there with expertise in their brains on how to navigate certain legal processes, and they just need to turn that into code, but they don't know how to code. So Gavel is a no-code platform that allows you to turn your legal services into legal products.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And Jazz, how about you? Tell us about your background and what led you to found TurnSignal.
Well, I feel lame now with my background after listening to both of theirs, but similar start. My undergrad is actually in computer science, and so I have a deep love for technology. But I was working in-house at a company, actually in an internship in their web development group, and I was just way too extroverted for that, and I knew I couldn't do it for another 55 years of my life or so. So I decided I was going to go to law school at that time. So I went to law school straight from undergrad. When I was in law school, I really enjoyed my time as a public defender. I was in a few different counties here in the state of Minnesota, representing folks when they woke up in jail at their bail hearings or revocation hearings or parole violations. So many different hearings at that time where I really got to see my first glimpse into the lack of access to justice that is really pervasive in our country, especially here in Minnesota, especially for people of color. So, but I had a whole bunch of student loans to pay back. So I went to corporate law. I was at a national law firm, like 300 employees across 15 states, where I was doing general civil litigation, insurance defense stuff, the really boring stuff in civ lit. And I was director of diversity inclusion. I was teaching a class at one of our local law schools here. And then 2020 happened. Of course, COVID changed the way you practice law. And then 4 miles from my house, George Floyd was murdered. And it was a moment for me. I had done all the protests and candlelit visuals after Philando Castile before him and so many more. And it was a moment where I was on so many panels, honestly, like I'm receiving now again after Friday, on so many panels of people asking how we can build a solution. And I felt like my words were ringing hollow because I was saying all of these things about how we can change federal law and local law, but I wasn't being a part of the more immediate solution. So with my wife's permission, I quit my job in October of 2020 to launch TurnSignal. TurnSignal is an app that anyone can have on their phone. We're live in 26 states now. And when you're pulled over or when you're in an accident, you press one button and it instantly starts recording the interaction with your front-facing camera, and then video conferences an attorney to be on the phone with you throughout that interaction. The mission being simple and three-pronged: to protect drivers' rights, to de-escalate these roadside interactions, and third, and most importantly, ensure everyone returns home safely at the end of the day.
Wow, that's fascinating. Not that anyone asked, but I'll share a little bit about sort of my focus on access to justice, right? So I actually started a big firm when I graduated because I had 6-figure loans to pay off and kind of grew up on a steady diet of LA law, thinking, I was going to be a hotshot trial lawyer. And then I quickly realized civil lawyers don't go to trial that often. Anyway, I paid off my loans, went to academia. But I also became disillusioned with traditional academia, in part because I was interested in access to justice. And I tried to get my law school involved in a legal incubator, which helps law school grads launch their own practices. But they always have a focus on access to justice, keeping costs low, offering at least a portion of your services to be pro bono or so-called low bono to modest needs clients. And I had grads who said, hey, sounds great. I have $200,000 in loans. I can't afford to hang out a shingle and represent the little guy. And then I was also interested in technology and legal education. And I realized the Concord models made so much sense because you don't have to support the cost of a campus and your professors can live anywhere and you can offer basically the same education. I happen to think it's better in some ways, but for a third of the cost. So to me, the connection between technology and access has always, made sense. Technology has brought down barriers in so many other fields, and it should in law as well. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about. Jazz, let me ask you some follow-up questions. So you said your platform's in 26 states. So how does it work? Does how many lawyers do you have to ensure that someone's always on the phone when someone calls?
Yeah, it definitely depends. What my favorite answer is: any lawyer that gives you a yes or no answer is a bad lawyer. So it depends. It depends on what state you're in, right? And the amount of attorneys we have in California is I think 6+. or 6 times the amount of attorneys we have in Nebraska or Iowa, right? And so it based on population, and what we can do is, I always use the analogy of growing like school teachers grow with students. As you have more and more people onboarding, we're adding more and more lawyers. We can project that out pretty well now, having been live in the market for almost 2 years, seeing how many folks will need to start a state. We have wait lists in every state that we're not in. And so we know, okay, this state has a lot of people waiting, so we're gonna have to have more lawyers when we start, and then we can continue to grow in that manner. So whether it's dozens and dozens of lawyers in some states that really add up, or whether it's a smaller state that can be handled by a smaller handful of people, it varies from state to state.
And do you ever have it where a lawyer who's in a different state will answer the phone? Obviously, they may not be knowledgeable about that specific jurisdiction's laws, but they probably know some basics about, civil rights or things like that. Does the platform allow that, or it has to be the same state?
Yeah, we actually drew a pretty firm line on that as of now, that anyone who answers a call practices law in the state that you're in at that moment. It is really helpful when we find attorneys who practice in multiple jurisdictions. We love the East Coast because everyone practices almost in every state out there. Right. So, when we go to the DMV, everyone practices in DC, Maryland, and Virginia because of the proximity of the jurisdictions. But yeah, when you press that button, you're always going to be connected to an attorney that practices law in that state, and that attorney knows what state you're calling from when they answer as well, which is really, really helpful for them.
And so it's an app, you can just download it on the App Store like any other, any other app?
Yeah, that's exactly true. Whether it's you have an Android device or an iPhone, it's $60 a year, whether you are pulled over. We have one person who's been pulled over, I think 3 times in the last 40 days. Whether you're pulled over that often, or you're pulled over just once in the year, or anything in between, it's going to be the same $60 a year. However, if you make under $40,000, the platform is completely free to you. You get the same service that Bill Gates would get, or anyone else, because we know, again, access to justice is really necessary. And I don't want anyone debating between, buying milk for their family or having turn signal for their 16-year-old. So it's free to those people who need it the most.
Well, that's great. And so the lawyers, how does it work? I mean, if they don't know who might be calling them, I assume it's unlikely there'll be like a conflicts issue, but how do do the lawyers have to volunteer? Do they have to do a conflicts check? How does that work?
Yeah, lawyers volunteer to be on the service, and there's no exchange of money with them or the individuals for this. We always say it's just a general consultation. They're saying, hey, it's also the analogy I use is it's like when I was a public defender, when I say, hey, listen, we're going to go out there. Here's the P's and Q's. Here's your best practices that you should follow during this. Should anything go awry or you really have concerns, you can turn and ask me some questions. That is the interaction with the officer and the driver and the attorney. So the attorney isn't there to speak to the officer. This isn't a talk to my attorney, here's my phone kind of platform. They're just there to give general legal guidance. And then of course you have the name of the individual as well. Where it's not civil litigation, so we don't have to worry about as much about conflicts with regards to people suing other people. So you get the name and the jurisdiction of the person that's calling right in that moment.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. Now, Dorna, let's talk about Gavel, formerly Documate. So you talked about its origins, but it sounds like it's grown well beyond that now. What does Gavel offer currently?
Yeah, so at our core, which is why we were previously called Documate, we were document automation, because we felt like building a platform that enables you to create really robust documents is really at the core of most legal areas. So that's what we had been focused on, for the first part of our company's history. But then we started to realize that our customers were using us for so much more. They were using the platform to gather information from their clients and do intake, to actually route them down different paths and potentially give them either decisions or at least pathways to get to an attorney to get to a decision. They were billing. We have billing features within our platform where attorneys can bill their customers in different ways. So they were billing their customers. They were storing documents in our platform, and they were also using it as a full-fledged client portal, where they were telling them what pieces of the process they needed to navigate at what stages of the case. So that was sort of part of the reason that for our rebrand is we are document automation, and we still think that that's such a core of legal services, but we have become so much more with the full provision of allowing really any attorney to create a legal technology product for their customers to use. And that's whether they want to have a completely DIY platform where they put it into the hands of the customer and the customer goes end to end through that platform, or whether it's a hybrid model, which is actually a lot more common, where maybe they put unbundled pieces of the process in the hands of their customer, but the attorney and the client, or the legal professional and the client, are still having touch points throughout the process.
So for your business model, it's almost always the attorney or the firm who is your client. Is that right?
Yes, attorney or paralegal, and we actually have some in states that have started to allow paraprofessionals to actually conduct some sort of business models. We have paraprofessionals who are doing that as well.
And we actually have an audience question. So can this be modeled to different practice areas? Like, how specific you can get if someone wants to do patent law or other very, detailed subspecialties? Can it work for a wide variety of legal fields?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a platform and we don't have any specific content that we create. So it doesn't matter what area of law our customers are practicing in, they can build their tools. And we feel like we're really a toolkit. The elements of the toolkit are allowing you to create variables, logic, calculations, and lists of information that you then input into your documents. And pretty much every area of law that we've worked with clients on have had that as part of the toolkit that they use to launch those products.
That's great. And actually another audience question, which I think is a good one. So in terms of cybersecurity, of handling, whatever information clients upload, I assume that's not something that your firm handles, that the client, that your customer is responsible for making sure that they use an encrypted system or whatever to make sure that the information is transmitted and stored securely. Is that right?
Yeah, so we also take a lot of precautions in that sense as well. So we set up every one of our customers on their own instance on AWS. We have lots of documentation that I can share with anyone on security as well. Everything's encrypted in transit and at rest. So that's something that we protect our customers on as well. We have regular pen testing on the platform. So that's, most of our customers are legal professionals, and there's obviously a lot of really sensitive data going through our system. So that's something that is of primary importance to us.
And I know you said it's no code, but for some Luddites like me out there, so let's say I'm trying to use it and I can't figure it out. Do you have like a support function as well?
Yeah, so we have great support. We have an amazing support team we can help unlimited on whatever plan you are. Even if you're using it for free, we'll help you as much as you want. We'll get on screen shares with you. But we also have a team of folks who are contractors who we call our Gavel experts. And if you just don't want to touch the system at all, or usually the situation isn't that they can't do it in Gavel, it's that they don't have time. So they may have, like 400 different forms that they want to automate in 1 month. And they're like, I don't have time to do this because I already work, 100 hours a week. So they can hand that over to a Gavel expert, and that person will basically build it all out for them.
Great. One more question, actually, the audience asked, is it open source and can others contribute to developing it?
So that's a really good question. So the core platform itself is not open source. However, we are moving towards, we have a lot of customers who build tools on Gavel, and they oftentimes want to share with each other. So for example, we work with a lot of legal aid organizations. One of the organizations who just launched some tools last week is Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services. They launched a bunch of tools in disability and social security law, and they have made it public for any other legal aid organization to take what they've built and modify it either for their own county, for their own jurisdiction. So in that way, it sort of becomes almost like the open sourcing of the products that you're creating. And that really applies so much, especially when you have such a fragmented legal system. Like in California alone, we don't even have that many counties compared to like Texas, but we have 58 counties in California, and all of them have their own little rules. The base might be the same, but if you're building something for Los Angeles County, someone in San Francisco can take that and add on the local forms that you need, which really helps. Our goal is to turn help turn law into code as quickly as possible. And that really helps facilitate that transition.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, Kristen, let's talk about Paladin. So tell us a little bit about that platform and how it works.
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of background just on the justice gap and the specific problem that we're trying to solve. So currently, the Legal Services Corporation reports that about 92% of low-income individuals' civil legal needs in the US are either not met at all or inadequately met.
Mhm.
And about 50% of people who qualify for pro bono services get turned away by legal services organizations because they don't have capacity. So we have this huge set of needs on the low-income individual side, and we have this pool of 1.3 million plus attorneys in the US, each of whom has a professional responsibility to do 50 hours per year of pro bono. So it's like a 65 million hour capacity. And yet there's this huge mismatch in skills and allocation in resources and work. And so one of the things that we strive to do is build the infrastructure that the pro bono ecosystem can use to more easily connect with individuals in need. And then folks who run their pro bono programs within law firms or in-house corporate teams or in bar associations can have a one-stop shop to manage their pro bono in one place. So the platform itself is two-sided, and we provide a free version of the tools to the legal services organizations, those nonprofits who are doing the intake and vetting of clients. They put their pro bono cases into the system once. With the click of a button, they can send those cases out to all the attorneys on Paladin's platform and folks who are also offline. And then in real time, pro bono coordinators and counsels and attorneys within these organizations can see a real-time database for the first time of all the clients in their area who need help. They can search, sort, filter based on their skill sets, their preferences, their availability, and find a case that's going to be a good fit for them. And we found that folks have really responded well to having that one-stop shop where they can find something that's going to be good for them when they do have a little bit of downtime, or if they're particularly passionate about a specific practice area.
That's great. And so is it a website or an app? How do people access it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a regular website, so you don't have to download anything specifically. It's just joinpaladin.com. We have specific instances of Paladin for individual clients on the firm and the corporate side, of vetted opportunities that the organization has chosen for them and pre-approved. And then we also have partnerships with about 10 state bar associations where we're powering pro bono for attorneys across the state. And it's free for them to peruse opportunities statewide in a number of states, including Illinois, Texas, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, a number of others, just so we can make sure we're offering opportunities to as many attorneys as possible, and eventually hope to be in all 50 states plus.
So how many states are you in right now?
Currently about 10.
That's great. And I'm in California. I'm curious, are you in California yet?
Not yet. They have a couple different projects going on there. But yes, one day I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, once you're out there, let me know. I'll be happy to help try and spread the word about it.
Thank you.
Speaking of spreading the word, so one question I have, you mentioned the Legal Services Corporation study, and I'm not sure if it's that one or a different one, but I believe I read that something like 44% of people who don't get legal help don't realize they have a legal problem or don't know, where to go. So, how do people find out about Paladin? What do you do to try and get the word out to the people who are most likely to need it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So actually, that's one area where we don't focus because we are more on the B2B side. So we don't work with individual clients in need. It's there's a process through which clients have to go in order to be vetted to qualify legally for pro bono services.
Right.
So we rely on the local expertise of the local legal services orgs to make sure they're doing that intake and vetting before they refer them out. So typically when a client is looking for legal help, we'll direct them to either an online legal navigator that's oftentimes run by a state bar association, or Pro Bono Net has really good resources, or local legal services organizations' websites, to make sure that they can find resources that will be a good fit for them and their specific legal issue, so they can get the best help that they can.
And I'm curious, so, I know from my time at a firm, sometimes associates come to a firm where a firm sort of talks a good game about offering pro bono, but the reality, kind of like Dorna alluded to, is, at the end of the day, there's the pressure to bill, and they're not as encouraging of pro bono as one might hope. Is there any thought to using law grads or summer associates to try and sort of increase the pressure, so to speak, to get firms to adopt something like this?
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I think pro bono culture can be built in two ways, right? It can either come from the top, from the folks who are running the firm, who really value it and instill that culture throughout, and it can also come from a groundswell of new associates. And we found that this generation, more than ever, are making decisions based on where they want to work, based on the opportunity to give back and have impact. And in fact, about 74% of recent law school grads say that they want an employer who gives them those opportunities. The other thing that we work to emphasize is the business benefits set of pro bono that haven't really been articulated before. So if you think about it, in addition to providing great community impact, pro bono is also creating great ROI within the firm itself. So firms are using pro bono for things like professional development, helping attorneys build skills in the courtroom, let's say. They're using it for client development, working with clients on pro bono work to build those relationships. Things like marketing, retention, recruitment, increasingly ESG, as that becomes more regulated. Of course, pro bono fits pretty squarely into the S of the ESG. So we're thinking a lot about, okay, how do we gather data and stories to articulate the value of pro bono in addition to the community impact, since it does have a much bigger impact on the firm as a whole that we want to make sure we're speaking to.
I love that point. One of the things that I found is, perhaps not surprisingly, if you're only appealing to people's sense of what's the right thing to do, it can be harder to get traction than if you say, hey, there's actually also a business benefit for you. And I think it's great that you're articulating that. We actually have an audience question, which I think is a good one for all of you, which is asking do you have translations in various languages? So I guess for Jazz, it would be, do you have attorneys who speak other languages that someone could talk to? So I guess I'll start with you, Dorna, for Documate. Do you have any non-English options?
We do. So we actually allow the applications to be built in 18 different languages right now. If there's a language that people want that we don't have, we can usually add it pretty quickly. But that's been a good way we even have, the hardest thing for us was getting the right to left languages in. So if you have a keyboard that can type your language into the system, you can build an application in that language.
That's fantastic. Jazz, how about you with the attorneys?
Yeah, there's a litany of things that are on the product roadmap of what we think to be really important. Language was one of the first ones. So we're actually just intentional with the attorneys that we find. It's like the gold resume attorney is someone who practices law in 5 states and speaks 3 different languages, right? Those are the ideal attorneys that we can find. And it's worked out pretty well, actually. For example, in Georgia, over half of our attorneys on the platform in that state speak Spanish as well. Similar numbers in California, but it still has to be really localized. Minnesota has some of the highest population for both Hmong and Somali individuals outside of the countries that they originate from. And so, of course, regionalizing that is another hurdle to address as well, but we're working really hard on it. So, but then the next version of that is immigration status, right? I cannot tell you how long we ideated around whether or not there would be a section of the part that you fill out when you join Turn Signal that says, would you like to tell us about your immigration status, right? People are hesitant to give that information because it makes them nervous that someone else is going to find out about their immigration status, right? But also we can do a better job of helping them if we know on the front end. So weighing all of these balances is like incredibly difficult, and sometimes you feel like there's no right answer, but it's definitely a process.
And how about you, Kristen? Is there any non-English component to Paladin yet?
Sure. So the website itself is all in English, but we do offer translation and interpretation pro bono opportunities. So if folks do want to donate their skills in other languages, they can do that.
That's great. That's great. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but we've got some great audience questions. Jazz, I have a question for you. So, well, my sort of intro question, do you know how many driver interactions have been used with your platform?
We launched Turn Signal in May of 2021. At the time, I had our team set me up as an attorney in all states, just so I knew when a call was coming in. And eventually, my wife was like, "Turn that off," because they're coming in like once or twice a day, and usually it's when I'm at home. And honestly, the most use the time frame that's used most for Turn Signal is like what in Central Time, dinner time. It's rush hour either way. So whether you're on the West Coast or East Coast, it's rush hour that people are driving the most and getting pulled over in accidents the most. So we're getting a few calls a day now, and that continues to grow as we're in 26 states. So, and it's about 70-30 also accident, 70% pullovers, 30% accidents is roughly the breakdown. And it's been that way almost since day one, which has been pretty interesting.
And I apologize, I don't remember if you said this. Does it record the interaction as well?
Yeah, so it starts recording with the front facing camera the second you activate the application, and you can flip it to the other camera. Let's say you're at the accident, you want to flip it to record kind of everything you see on the outside of your vehicle, all of that stuff. So it does record the whole time, and whether your phone is lost, broken, damaged, stolen, or anything in between, it saves to the cloud immediately. So you can always go and pull that down as a driver, and only the driver has access to that video. The attorney doesn't have access to it. We at Turn Signal can never view it unless you send it to us. We make it so that only that driver has access to that video.
So that leads to the audience question. Has there ever been an instance, as far as you know, where a driver has used the video as evidence, either to defend themselves or in a civil rights case or anything like that?
Yeah, so we've never been subpoenaed or anything, nor do we know of any driver that's been subpoenaed for that evidence. It's kind of a secondary question to that we hear a lot, but we haven't seen anyone use it in court yet. I don't know if I'm happy or unhappy about that. I don't want it to rise to that level. I hope it doesn't have to, but I'm really excited for the day that someone will have that video when they do need it in that moment. Whether it's the video, Tyree Nichols sadly lost his life from an interaction that happened January 7th, and the public didn't see that video until last Friday. And it wasn't but for a lot of work from a lot of people to get that video. We really love the fact that the drivers themselves have these videos all the time with themselves. And so it reduces that access to justice, the friction that I hear so many times from people that say, this happened to me, but no one was there and no one saw it, so I didn't do anything about it, or I didn't know an attorney that I can talk to. That's actually the value of the video, is saying now you have something tangible that you can step away with from that interaction.
That's great. Now, Dorna, I'm curious. I mean, your platform obviously was originally intended for domestic violence victims, but it's grown well beyond that. I'm curious what the mix of your customer base is, if you can share that. Do you know how many of your customers or clients are in the pro bono or related fields versus just sort of regular, paying attorneys?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I don't have specific numbers right now, but sort of off the top of my head, I would say probably somewhere around like 15 to 20% of our customers are in the legal aid sphere. We do give our software at really reduced rates or free to legal aid organizations. And so they're building all sorts of tools. But we also need to make revenue as a company, because that's our business model. So we target, in terms of our marketing, we mostly target small and mid-sized firms, which we feel like are actually contributing in a similar way to the same gap, because they're creating tools that, while they are charging for them and they are for profit, they're able to provide them at really reduced rates. And then in terms of the mix of practice areas, we don't know what our customers are building, because we don't see that unless they actually tell us, or unless they publish it and say that it's built on the Gavel platform. But there are a ton of tools that are in the consumer space, like in family law. We have a lot of eviction defense tools. We have a very, very light version of a marketplace where people can post different tools. It's not really publicly announced yet, but if anyone's curious to check out a very primitive draft of it, it's at gavel.io/marketplace. You can see some of the different tools that people have built, and some of those are legal aid tools.
That's cool. And I mean, I think 15 to 20% in the legal aid and pro bono space is really high, right? I mean, when you think about, they're not near, I don't know what the statistics are, I don't know if any of you do, but I don't think they're nearly that fraction of the amount of legal providers out there, right? I mean, it's probably closer to like 1%. So the fact that it's at 15, 20% shows you're really having a, disproportionate impact in that space. And I think your other point is a really good one. When we talk about the justice gap, it's not just people who qualify for legal aid and may not be able to be served because they lack capacity, right? There's estimates that 1 in 5 Americans, over 60 million Americans, right, are, they make too much to qualify for legal aid, but yet they're priced out of the standard market for legal services. And I think that's, it's an important point. That's kind of what attracted me to the incubator world, right, is that solo practitioners and small firms really are on the front lines in a lot of ways of, the access to justice issue in this country, because they're the ones who, more than anyone are representing working class people, right? People with, low dollar value legal problems. That's a really important part of the puzzle that I don't think we should, we can forget when we're talking about the justice gap.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's the average attorney in the US charges about $3.50 an hour, obviously much more in major metropolitan areas. And the average American makes somewhere around $30 an hour. And obviously minimum wage is even lower. So there's a huge gap there. And if you can use technology to come up with creative pricing models that work for both sides of that supply demand equation, then it really does benefit everyone.
Well, let's talk about some of the challenges, right? I mean, you all have the challenge of running a business, but also trying to, in your own ways, address the underlying justice gap. What are some of the challenges that you're aware of that you've seen firsthand in trying to close that gap and trying to get access to those who need it? Kristen, maybe I'll start with you on that.
Oh my goodness, that could be a whole nother panel about challenges. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is just figuring out where to start and where you can add value. And something that you were just making me think about is just the justice journey and how we can, what I call it, someone's path from figuring out they even have a legal issue to figuring out the right resources to help them, which is where Jazz comes in, to figuring out what kind of documents and processes and applications they need to file and get help with that, which is where Dorna's platform comes in. And maybe they can't figure it out themselves at all, and they need help from a lawyer for free, which is where Paladin comes in. And there's so many different touch points that an individual has with our legal system. And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit as a result of where we can start. And so for us, it was really figuring out, even though we had narrowed it down to pro bono, we want to help get more people access to more pro bono lawyers. Even within that process, we literally sat down and process mapped the pro bono workflow within an AmLaw 100. And it was something like 52 steps from the beginning of receiving a case to finally closing it out and reporting on it. And even figuring out, okay, where across those 52 steps can we apply technology? Where does it have to be a human? What requires judgment and decision-making? What can we automate? Those are all very intentional decisions that I think as a justice tech founder and entrepreneur, you have to be consciously thinking about before you dive in and get to a solution. So that's something that we're constantly trying to figure out is, what else, how should we prioritize what else we can be building? What should we be building for whom? What is the impact going to be? What is the trade-off, et cetera? And they're definitely not easy decisions to make just from a product and development perspective.
Oh, I can definitely see that. Jazz, how about you? Your company is a couple years old now. What are some of the challenges that you see? And again, it could be your personal journey with your company or just what you see in the broader picture of trying to close that gap.
Yeah, I think, I haven't said much about it, but Turn Signal, similar to some of the other entrepreneurs on this panel, is a lot of B2B work. So a vast majority of revenue is B2B. Companies offer Turn Signal as a benefit to employment. That is the vast majority of how we sign people on, or I should say how the revenue comes from, because there's a lot of folks who come on without paying anything. So there's people like, what are some of our clients? iHeartMedia in Minnesota, or a couple of accounting firms, or the YWCA or Greater United Way Twin Cities. All of them offer Turn Signals a benefit to their employees, which is great. And that's, part of keeping the lights on. But the difficult part is actually the B2C work. Getting it to those individuals costs a lot of money. When I'm talking to folks and they say, what's your customer acquisition cost? for B2B, it's a lot different than it is for B2C. But those B2C folks in most cases are some of the most important people that you need to reach. And so just finding a way to do that in a cost-effective way has been really challenging for us. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but TikTok became one of those. I posted a TikTok video last week or 2 weeks ago, and it had like 200,000 views and 75,000 likes, and now takes up like 2 hours of my day, like posting TikToks and responding to people, which is the last thing I want to be doing probably. But you have to find your way. That is a very cheap customer acquisition cost, and I think we had over 1,200 new users in a week from it. So, that's the challenges is finding out how to get these individuals and how to reach them in a cost-effective way.
That's great.
Gosh, Jazz, I didn't realize you're a Justice Tech TikTok celeb.
Yeah.
This is great.
Far from it. I posted one literally 5 minutes before this panel started. So please go like it, guys. So it'll go viral.
Yeah, go share it for sure. But yeah, but essentially marketing and making sure people know about your solution is very hard. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
This will definitely date me about how old school I am. I wasn't at Concord at the time, but when Concord first began in the late 90s, no one was clear if it was going to work at all, right? I mean, every law school in the country went online because of the pandemic for a year or so. But 20 odd years before that, the idea of an online law school was crazy. And there was actually an article about it in either the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, one of those, or maybe the Washington Post. Anyway, that article basically was like the TikTok of the day, because a bunch of people signed up because they read the article, and then that's what kind of got the momentum going. So we couldn't have guaranteed that would happen, and just kind of sort of fell into our laps, right? But trying to create those opportunities for earned media, as they call it, is tough. Dorna, what are your thoughts on some of the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think just hearing you guys speak about this, our challenge is almost like the meta version of this, because we're very much B2B, and we have very specific channels through which we bring awareness of our platform. But our customers have this same problem, which is they build these incredible tools. They put so much time and effort into building them, but then they don't know, how can I actually disseminate this to my customers and my potential customers? And so a lot of our work has been actually, some of our customers are amazing at it. They know how to navigate social media. They know how to navigate paid ads and all of that. Some of our customers, their expertise is the law, and they don't know much about marketing. And so part of our challenge has been to actually educate our customers on how to build these legal businesses that bring awareness to the things that they're trying to put out into the world. And then as part of that, I think it's also, this being sort of a new area, like legal productization, we also have to sometimes help our customers navigate the decision on what can be automated and what can't be automated. Like, right. What is something you should put into a legal app, and what is something really you should be advising your client on individually.
Yeah, I think that part's really important. And, I'll share just one more quick story with me. So, I do still practice on the side. Obviously my full-time day job is being the dean, but I think it's important to keep my connection to practice. And I'm actually helping a friend with a case right now where he's already got a judgment and he's trying to collect. And that's a piece of the legal puzzle that I've never dealt with. And it's so complicated and it's so abstruse. And I'm a lawyer, and, I can barely understand it. And it's just interesting to see, right? The more you kind of just live it and deal with stuff, the more you see where there are problems in need of solutions. And I don't know if that's the type of problem that could be solved with technology, but until I was exposed to it, I never even knew there was the problem, right? And I realized that's a whole nother, piece of the puzzle that we often don't think about. We're winding down a little bit towards the end. So we've been talking about what we've been doing and what you are doing. I want to sort of transition and talk about the future, right? Where we see things going. I personally am very interested in AI, and I'm actually trying to, I'm personally for the school trying to see what we can do to integrate AI and virtual reality. I'm curious, what do you see next? And it doesn't have to be some, highfalutin technology, but, what do you see next for your companies? And then we're going to talk about what do you see next for technology and access to justice more broadly? So Kristen, I'll turn to you. Where are you looking to go, or where do you see Paladin evolving in the coming years?
Sure. So I'll answer in two ways. So the first part is, in thinking about that justice journey, I do see the potential for AI to be leveraged at each step in, number one, helping individuals identify that they even have a legal issue, right? Because most people don't have a legal issue. They just have a problem.
Right.
And they don't know that it's legal. So how do we help them issue spot for legal challenges? That's number one. Number two, how do we build smart legal navigators to help people get to the right resources faster and more accurately to help them solve their problems sooner? The third step is around, document automation. How do we help people build out the documents and file what they need to as efficiently as possible? And in my case, I'm thinking about, for Paladin, not just how do we make pro bono connections more seamless, but then how do we help pro bono lawyers do their work more efficiently and more accurately using AI and machine learning? And then longer term, how do we open up the tools that pro bono lawyers are using to help individuals in need to help individuals help themselves? And really, after we've increased capacity in the pro bono space, help the 50% of folks who get turned away because they can't access a pro bono lawyer get access to the tools that they need to represent themselves. So there are a lot of different, again, touch points where I think we can leverage AI, and it's about doing it really responsibly, thoughtfully, intentionally, and really on the backbone of the foundations that we're currently building now. I see those as really the biggest opportunities.
Jazz, how about you?
Yeah, for turn signal directly nationwide is, of course, goal number one, getting there as soon as possible here in this year. And then for the future, just making it accessible in all the different ways, to move outside of just a phone app is going to be really important for us. And then to move outside of the vehicle, right? I of course want to be there for the Tyree Nichols and the George Floyds of the world whose incidents started in the car, but I also want to be there for the Breonna Taylors whose incidents started inside of their home, right? And so doing that work is down the road, but of course you have to finish doing something where the law is constrained to a vehicle is a lot easier than someone who's walking on the street or maybe in their home. So that's what I see in the future, and I see unbelievable opportunities for AI. Obviously, we're seeing a little mini glimpse of it with ChatGPT right now. And to circle back to the other question, I think it's already a great thing you can utilize in marketing. You can put really specific things about your company in and churn out some really great content that can just be pushed out really quickly. I think that's a great way to leverage it within a law technology, but not maybe necessarily in the law process of the technology. I think it's just going to get smarter and better. And so I think the lawyers as a profession are known for being a little slow to adapt to new things, maybe more so than other professionals. So I think it's a really good opportunity for us to start leveraging that in our future use of technology.
Dorna, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so for us at Gavel, we see that in the next 10 years, it's been estimated that about 90% of legal services are going to be delivered online in some way. And so everything that we build is really, that's our North Star, as we're trying to help facilitate people, legal professionals, to build those tools on our infrastructure. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for AI in the legal field. But I also think that for us as a company, there is also just so much opportunity in the less exciting stuff, the less AI stuff. There's just so much opportunity in process. And so that's what we really continue to be laser focused on. I mean, we're always staying up to date on what the latest improvements are to AI, but there's so much that we can do just by implementing the most simple version of AI, which many years ago was just creating if-then logic inside of a system, and how that can expand access to justice.
And, Jazz mentioned ChatGPT. For those in the audience who don't know what that is, it came out, I think, late November, early December of last year, and I think had 1 million users within its first 5 days. It is an AI platform that basically uses everything that's on the web. And it can generate unbelievable content, often not accurate content, But you know, in the higher education space, people are freaking out, right? Some schools have already, you know, banned it. But I think it's a different ballgame in the legal space. I see the promise, right, of AI creating maybe not final documents, but pretty good first drafts of basic documents that could make it a lot cheaper and quicker, right? Since, hey, I don't have to hire a lawyer for 5 hours, right, at $350 an hour, you know, if the machine can generate a decent first draft in 30 seconds, and they only have to spend, you know, 45 minutes revising it, that's a lot cheaper. Do you guys see that, or do you guys see AI as ultimately displacing lawyers and being really disruptive in a problematic way in the legal industry? Sort of the, you know, Terminator robots are taking over way, I guess.
I can speak
I
for
don't know.
my time as a early associate, that the partners in the firm didn't even like my writing so much that they'd scrap my version and start all over. So I think a lot of the more senior attorneys are going to be pretty trepidatious about starting from something that AI created. Hopefully that tide will turn if it does get to the point where it's really productive and helpful. But I think a lot of people are stuck in their ways and will want to stick to drafting their first go at it. Or the bigger concern I see is, you know, if I am a lawyer and I have a client and they're sending me drafts of things, I'd be pretty hesitant. So it'd have to be the lawyers using the AI first, not the client using it and sending it to them. So it'd have to start within the law firm, which maybe someone can build something to make that successful.
Yeah. Kristen, do you have any views on this?
Yeah, you know, I think especially in my world, in the pro bono space, pro bono is so personal, and low-income individuals' legal needs are so nuanced that you can never really replace that human connection and the discretion needed to help someone in need. So I don't think that lawyers are going to go away. No, I do see AI though providing a huge administrative lift and helping them get that access to justice a lot faster.
Dorna, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, you know, not to be pessimistic on ChatGPT-3, but I think we're far away from that actually displacing lawyers for a few reasons. I think the top two would be sources, similar to sort of what Jazz and Kristen said. If you have an amazing brief, it doesn't matter that it's an amazing brief if it doesn't have a bunch of sources that you can check and make sure that you know where that information is coming from. And then second is the data. Like, I just don't know if for all the different areas, obviously you can go on ChatGPT-3 and have it put like an employment agreement together for you or fundraising documents, but there are so many more areas of law that are much more niche and where the data doesn't really exist yet in a public forum for it to be used by AI, but maybe that's in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I tend to be a pessimist in a lot of ways, but I'm not about this. You know, because every time there's talk about machines replacing lawyers, I mean, you think about Westlaw, right, or LexisNexis. I mean, you know, it used to be people had to hunt book to book to book to do the research, and it'd take you 1 day, you know, 3 days to write one brief, and now you can Westlaw stuff, and you can write 3 briefs in 1 day. And it just becomes the new standard, right? There's the expectation you're going to use the technology. No client will be willing to pay for you to spend hours looking at books. And I'm optimistic that it's going to help or be the most value add in the access space, right? Because that's where there's the biggest need, right? I mean, lawyers always want to find ways to do things more efficiently, but, you know, for, you know, $1,000 an hour lawyers, ultimately you still want to find something to bill $1,000 an hour for. When you have a client where, you know, if it takes you 10 hours, I can't afford you, but if it takes you 2 hours, I can. I think that's where the technology could end up being a big help, and even, you know, more important in the access to justice space than in the traditional space. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to give you each an opportunity. If you have any advice to those who are interested in promoting justice, maybe they're entrepreneurs, maybe they're not, advice for things people do, just closing thoughts on what we've discussed. I'm going to kind of leave it completely open. So Jazz, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I feel like I was in the audience because I was enjoying both of you speaking about the work you do. It's incredible, and I'm a huge fan of both of your work. So congratulations on all you've done already and will do in the future. If you're thinking about doing anything access to justice related or starting something, I always say there's a great opportunity to get the boat close enough to the dock. You can work in a normal corporate job or be a civil litigator and do this on the side in the evenings or on the weekends. And then once you get that boat close enough to the dock, make the jump and go all in on it. It's what I did, and I hope that all of you will be encouraged to do the same. There's a lot more entrepreneurship to go around, and I can't wait to see what comes of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Dorna, how about you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I agree. I've just really enjoyed hearing all the Kristen and Jazz speak today as well. For those of you in the audience who are thinking about becoming legal tech entrepreneurs, I like to say, think big, start small, and iterate rapidly. You may have a very big, amazing idea for what you want to build, and that's wonderful. Keep that big dream and big idea, but start with something small that you can execute on fairly quickly and get out into the world and get tested, and then iterate really rapidly on that to see if you're solving a real problem and a real need that your users are going to enjoy.
Thank you. And Kristen, I'll give you the last word.
All right, to close it out, I'm gonna make a plug for pro bono. I think the people in this audience, I appreciate the speakers and everything that they're doing. Also, everyone in the audience is a legal professional in one way or another, and you have really powerful skills that can significantly impact someone's life. And it can be as simple as doing client intake or doing phone screens or doing translation work or document review to a longer term, more lengthy asylum case and everything in between. And so there's so many ways to get involved and have impact in your community. And I'd encourage everyone to try it out, get connected, build your skills, build your network, and really impact someone's life. So I appreciate everyone for being here and thinking about these things so critically.
Well, thank you, Kristen, Jazz, and Dorna. You guys are all very impressive. Really, y'all blow me away with what you're doing in such different ways, but such important ways. Again, I also want to thank everyone in the audience for watching. This is an important issue. It's not going to go away, but we can all do our part in different ways. And enough people making their little mark, in the aggregate, it makes a big difference. So I want to thank you all for attending. I look forward to seeing you all at the next Distinguished Speakers webinar. And that's all we have for today. So thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon, or I saw there's somebody from Germany, so good night, wherever you are. We hope you enjoyed and look forward to talking next time. Take care.